Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Do I sound sexy? Hi. That's creepy. I'm not going to do that. Come on in. Oh, man. Let me make sure you can hear me. Let me make sure you can tell me if you can see me okay. Today, we have an amazing episode. We have two guys that have been part of the Tesla community for a long time. They've introduced us all to a lot of different things in the Tesla world. And they run a channel called Now You Know. Father and son duo, so it's going to be super fun speaking to them. If you don't know them by now, you should probably look at the thumbnail, right? That might help. But with them, we have our special community forum guests as well. These are people that support the channel through Patreon or YouTube. We have Ishan, we have Kuba, we have Hans. Welcome, y'all. And then, most importantly, we have our very special guests, the one and only Zac and Jesse. Welcome, my friends. How you guys doing?
Yeah.
Wow, you really hyped that. Wow.
Hi, Farzad. How you
But
doing?
I'm going to try and sound sexy, though.
I'm going to talk to the
Yeah.
too. I think it sounds good.
Oh my God, we sound so good together.
Our
Thank you guys,
awesome
honestly.
microphones.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Let me turn off this music because I'm terrible with production. Really appreciate you guys making the time. Welcome in, and excited to have a discussion with you.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Awesome, man. So the way we do it is we just start with a topic with our community forum. In case for those that are not familiar with the format, our community forum members will pose questions, and we'll have a free-flowing conversation about that topic. I'll act as a sort of moderator, and I'll try not to hog the microphone too much because I do have one, but I'll make sure everybody has an input. But we'll start with Hans. Hans, go ahead and kick us off with the first topic, and then we'll see where it goes.
Cool. Yeah. Well, so I just wanted to start off by once again, thanking y'all for all the content that you put out over the years. I know that a lot of people have gotten a lot of value out of that, and you've introduced a lot of people, some here on this very forum, to Tesla, and it's just great to have you here and get to have this conversation. One of the things that I've been curious about recently is, we see a lot of other companies kind of trying to get started in the clean tech and e-mobility space, and Sandy has been helping out a lot of these companies, people like Arcimoto, for example, to try and really start making an impact. But when we look at some of these other companies and then we compare them back to Tesla, one of the key differentiators, besides even maybe just like the product roadmap that Elon has, and maybe the ability that he has to figure out what the most important problems are to solve, really goes back to that pace of innovation. And so we've seen people like Farzad and Joe Justice talk about Agile at Tesla and digital self-management and different ways that they just really try and drive the pace of innovation inside. And then we've seen, as Sandy's done all these teardowns, just how quickly the product changes from year to year to year to year. And, you go from a super bottle 1 year to an octo valve in a year or maybe a year and a half later. And it really just shows how quickly Tesla is moving. And I've wondered for a long time how critical that is for outsized success in accelerating the world's advent to sustainable energy. And these aren't things that I typically see when I look at somebody like Arcimoto. It seems like they're moving much more slowly. They are iterating, they are moving in the right direction, they're making important strides, but it doesn't seem like from the outside that they're moving as quickly. And so, what's y'all's perspective on that? And is there any maybe guidance that you would give to some of these companies on how to begin to increase their pace of innovation?
So, I think when we're talking about Tesla, one of the things that Zac and I had been talking about for years was like kind of what is now considered like groundwork. All the stuff that they had been doing from like 2010 or even before that, really, like they were and I would say more as a comparison between traditional OEMs. That was all like groundwork, getting the batteries and being able to produce packs that like didn't catch on fire, GM, and stuff like that. Like I would consider that to sort of be like groundwork. But you're mentioning a lot of things that are happening like in the past couple of years, which I don't think is groundwork. I think it's company culture. I think that a big factor when we're talking about different companies is where they're located and what that has to do with the people working there. I think that the reason that Silicon Valley was successful is because Silicon Valley developed a culture. And I'm not a huge fan of I'm not a big Silicon Valley kind of guy. I haven't worked there. I don't plan on working there, but I think that there's certain places in the world where you're going to get a lot more done because stuff is just expected. And I think that is one of the factors, and especially I think when we're talking about Arcimoto, one of the factors that leads to Tesla being so successful. Yes, their corporate culture has a lot to do with it, but I think that their corporate culture had to start somewhere, and starting in Silicon Valley is not the worst place to start when we're talking about innovative tech and moving really quickly.
That's a really good point because, Arcimoto, I just visited Eugene, Oregon for the first time, and Arcimoto is a big fish in a small pond. And there's maybe nothing wrong with that, except that if I asked you guys to go move there to work, you that would be a big factor in deciding whether you would work for the company. It would be like, okay, I got to go check out Eugene. Is that where I want to move my family? And I have to imagine for a lot of people, the answer would be no, and which means that the pool that they're getting from seemed like it was largely from Eugene. And I don't know enough about Eugene. Maybe there's a huge pool, but I got to imagine that it's not the same kind of pool as you get in Silicon Valley and other places that are high tech.
And I think, the pool means that you're going to be drawing from the best of the best from all around the world. And, why is Silicon Valley so great? It's because if I want to stop working at one company and go work at another, I'm not going to have to wildly change my commute. Not that living in Silicon Valley is cheap by any means. I think that we would all rather pay to live in Eugene than live in Silicon Valley. But I think that the other thing is that there's also, what do the people who want to work in Silicon Valley want to have around them? And so it's going to be everything from the restaurants to where I can go on the weekends to it's a lively hub of activity.
I mean, Tesla has talent, and you can't, I know you can buy talent if you have enough money, but most of these companies don't. So Tesla has something that's just secret sauce, which is the world's best people want to work for them. That's an enviable position to be in.
And it's self-fulfilling,
which
is amazing, but it's also just really tough to replicate. It's so hard to just be like, oh yeah, because we're also connected. Elon has said, if you also want to work on rockets, you can do that too.
Well, can we also talk about West Coast time versus East Coast time? So I grew up on the East Coast. I've worked, and Jesse was born on the West Coast. When I went to the West Coast, places like LA felt like I was in a town called Molasses Town. Everyone was moving to half the speed that I was moving. I started as an intern at my job, and in 10 weeks, I had my boss's job. And everyone's like, how do you move so fast? I'm like, I don't know. It's just how we do things on the East Coast. Now, in Silicon Valley, that's different. They're their own little East Coast. They move very fast. But when I was in Eugene, it felt like Molasses Town again. It felt like everyone was like, hey, dude, what's up? And that's fine. I'm sure that's great for, living in a wonderful life. But when you're running a company with high competition, it felt slow to me. And I think that, to your point, Hans, I think a lot of these companies, just compared to Tesla speed, are running at half speed or quarter speed.
And I don't want to pick on just Arcimoto. No. I think that there's a lot of companies that don't have the right culture, even some that are based in Silicon Valley. But like Rivian. Okay, so they're in Normal, Illinois. Is that slowing them down? Was it smart that Tesla jumped to Austin, Texas? Because Austin is like the new Silicon Valley. And so that's is it all mental? I think a lot of it's mental. You gotta think like we're the next thing. And so all the guys working in Austin, Texas, I bet are busting their butts off because they're like, this is the next thing. And you're just trying to fulfill that, even if it's subconscious.
Also, a lot of the company leaders for these startups are very well loved within their company, but you also have to be feared. And there's something about Elon, right, where he's loved and feared at the same time. He sleeps on the floor of the factory, and we all love him for that. But also,
that's kind of scary.
It's kind of scary. It's like, oh shit,
I better show up.
He was here before me.
I better be there when he wakes up.
Exactly. And so he has this amazing ability to get his troops to love him and fear him. How many other leaders can you think of that have that ability?
Right. And I will say, especially about Arcimoto, I really respect Mark for his, I will say, first principles thinking about especially the environment, and that he really cares about it. And and it's super evident from everything that he does. It's never, I'm never questioning that. And I so appreciate that about him, which is what I appreciate Elon for as well, is that he's I can tell that he's thinking, very long term, since he's like, I want consciousness to continue and to get to Mars. And I'm like, okay, I can't fault him on that.
And a similar thing that's happening to Tesla, which is it's a heavily shorted company. Arcimoto is heavily shorted. And when you're that small a company and you're heavily shorted, it really hurts because that means you don't have the capital to do a lot of things. So I am really amazed at what Arcimoto has been able to do with very low capitalization.
Right. I mean, I would switch over to talking about Rivian, where I mean, I was fortunate enough to actually get to interview RJ Scaringe at it was in New York. And I was trying to ask him the questions about like, so climate change and this sort of thing. And he was answering in a really safe way. Oh, someday we're going to run out of oil. It's like, no, we're not actually, because we're all going to be dead if we keep drilling oil the way it's not like, oops, we ran out. That's not going to happen first. It's a very safe way for me to, for some people to go like, oh, right, oil is, you're like dog whistling me, but like, I don't know. It was like, that's not what I wanted to hear. And then I was like, so why do you want to be a CEO? And he's like, well, I always wanted to be a CEO. And it's like, no, I don't want you to want to be a CEO. I want you to have to be a CEO. You wanted to do the thing. And so you went, well, I guess I have to be in charge since so, I mean, I would say that sometimes it's company culture from the top. And sometimes it's tough. I mean, Arcimoto is in such a less enviable position than Rivian in terms of money. RJ Scaringe can go to, turn to Jeff Bezos one day and say, I need, billions more dollars and you got it. Here's the check. So I want to balance that on a whole.
Yeah, and we were talking to Ross Gerber, and he brought up a really good point, which is that these companies, it's really hard to get to the mass production point. You have to thread a needle, and it's not. I went out to Arcimoto, and I thought the needle was come up with the prototype and then mass produce it. I thought it was just A and B, but it's not. It's come up with the prototype, but that prototype is not quite ready yet. You have to keep iterating, and so that means you can't make 2,000 of each part. In China, you have to come up with 10 parts cheaply and then iterate those parts and change them again. So they have to actually have the right machine so that they can keep iterating while they ramp up production. It's a lot harder than I thought. And so these companies are all finding that out after having spent years not thinking about that problem. They were just thinking about how can we come up with a cool prototype.
And I mean, I think it's especially easy to look at Tesla now and to just be like, why aren't you guys doing it? Whereas if you went back a couple of years, everyone was going like, Tesla's going bankrupt tomorrow, and that's just what we think. Here's the official what we think. And it's like, well, they were wrong, but only by this.
And the more you learn about what Elon's done just over the past few years, you see that he's so brilliant, not just in engineering, not just in people leadership skills, but in business. He's got like the trifecta. That's just rare. I mean, it's hard enough to be a really good engineer or a really good people person, but to be all in one.
And to make the right decisions consistently. And I'm not saying that he's made all correct decisions, but in terms of he couldn't have made, there were a bunch of critical decisions that if he made the wrong one, I think, reading through like the book Power Play, you realize like, he's trying, the author's trying to kind of portray him as this like evil, mean kind of guy, but it's like, he should, a bunch of these people that he had to like fire, like publicly and nastily, you're like, I'm kind of glad that he did.
Right. Yeah. A lot of hard moves.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and not just, the trifecta of business and engineering and then having the mission, but like people say engineering, like it's this monolithic thing. Oh yeah, you can be a good engineer. Like an engineer of what? Oh yeah, I'm a rocket scientist. I'm a mechanical engineer, material science. And like he can go so deep on any one of those individual disciplines. Like, yeah, as a mechanical engineer myself, it's pretty scary to like hear him talk about all the different engineering topics. Just that in and of itself.
He's truly like a master of a jack of all trades.
To go get books out of the library about rocket science and then design a rocket.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. And then now he has the best rockets on the planet.
Right.
What?
And he's just outclassed every other. He's outclassing Boeing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I just would love to. Here's what if I had a time machine and they were like, Jesse, you can go back in time, but you can't change anything. I would just want to go back and like just ask people like, so do you think that anyone's gonna ever like be better at rockets than Boeing? And they would have been like, ha, 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 you idiot! I'm not gonna listen to you. You know, it's like, yeah, I mean, and you know, like, who do you think's gonna make reusable?
What about a
rockets?
guy who's never known anything about rockets and goes to the library about it? What?
He gets turned down by the Russians to buy rockets, and then he turns out, and then he schools them completely in all sorts of different ways, and then
It
in a
doesn't even
major
seem
war.
real. It seems like we're talking about a science fiction like trilogy.
It's really funny. I remember when we read like the Foundation, the first book in the Foundation series, and it's, you know, it's kind of this. It's very Isaac Asimov because, you know, he like loves science fiction, and so it's the characters are always a little bit unrealistic, but they're like unrealistic in the way that Elon's unrealistic, in just that like they win so good, you know, in so many of the different you know, challenges that they face, that they win so good, and you're just like, wow, that was a really interesting book. And then you go, you know, you turn to real life and you're just like, so the same guy who wouldn't sell you rockets, you just basically got him fired from Russia because you've been outclassing him in space, and then also been putting up satellites that have been screwing with the Russians' invasion of Ukraine. You're like, wow. Yeah. You can't write that. Like if you wrote that, people would be like, yeah, as your editor, I just have to say this is getting a little much.
It's such an insane example of just brute force winning. He's just been able to really just capitalize on execution. And the one thing I'm really curious to hear from you both, Zac and Jesse, is as you've been exposed to the call it the competitive landscape, so rivian, arcimoto, so on and so forth. And what I really enjoy about your channel is that you guys really do approach things from a very non-biased view. You try to really lay out the facts, which I really appreciate. I know sometimes you may get some flack from, say, certain extreme parts of either camp, but I really encourage you guys to continue doing that, because even as like an investor, it allows me to understand what the hell is going on right around the perimeter, not just Tesla. So within that context, and having had direct experiences with other companies, how has your thesis around Tesla and, say, perceived competition morphed over time? And curious to hear your thoughts for the next 5-10 years. How do you see this playing out from your perspective?
I think one moat we were talking about earlier today is the supercharger moat. It's such a huge piece of the pie, and no one really ever talks about it. And yet it's just growing every day. Every week on the show, we do more supercharger reviews. Like they're just piling up there. And it's just something that if you're not in the world of Teslas, like if you're in EVs, but you're not a Tesla driver, they're probably invisible to you. You're going to EAs and other charging networks. We've been forced to do it the opposite way, actually, because now that we've gotten the Rivian, we've been going to EA more often and stuff. And we just are like, what, this is what you have to live with? And so that's a big piece of it right there. Talk about next 5-10 years. Elon can now decide whether he lets other EV companies use his network. So he's in an enviable position where he can be like, do I want...
I want
$7.5 billion of government money or not?
And I mean, we were talking with Ross Gerber today, and he was just saying, like, there's no other charging companies that I can invest in, because they all suck. And it's like, how? It's a cable with a thing that says, are you this person and you pay me money? I will turn on the power. Like,
they still haven't figured that out.
They still haven't been able to get that to work, you know, in a way that everyone's going to be able to use it. 99 point, what was the quote that we heard last? 99.7%.
Yeah, Tesla's at 99.6%, which is what it's 99.96, I believe, which is 3 hours down per month,
per year,
per month. I think
it's wildly good.
Yeah, super high.
Like,
it's so high that it's inconsequential.
It's never down.
Right. It's basically,
it's always up.
If it's down, you just have to wait.
Whereas the others was like, I think it was 96% or something. So it was like 18 days down or something. It was, it's night and day. They don't realize that basically it has to be that high or else you won't count on it. It's kind of like anything. Like if you went to go into your house and your key didn't work that often, you'd be like, I have to get rid of the lock.
Get a new lock. Right.
So that's just one little piece, right? That's the charging network. But you said 5 to 10 years. One of the things that I think is interesting is we're all valuing the company based on metrics to do with cars and maybe a little bit energy, which is great. That's what they make right now. But we're about to get 2 completely new products, right? So FSD is autonomy, and Tesla bots are robots,
which are labor,
which
and haven't been
in the history of humankind has not been a product.
You haven't been able to. Well, okay, that's not true. Labor used to be a product.
Sure.
Not that I think that we should
should
ever go back to that, or should. No, but it was
right, and it changed economies.
It was very. If you completely ignore all the terrible parts about it,
right?
Okay, then I guess you have your framework.
So I mean, we're about to have these two products from this company. So either you believe that or you don't. Like that's the first part, right? You either believe that he's going to do robots and FSD, or you're one of these people who's like, that'll never happen. Well, you're wrong. So when he does those two things, it's only a question of when.
Exactly.
I love it. I love that EcoWare shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
So either it happens or it doesn't. And when he does it, they're both going to be earth shattering. And yet we can't put a price on it yet because how do you put a price on it? And because we don't have a timeline, it's like, well, I don't know. So 5 to 10 years, those two things come along and change everything.
Right. It's like 2000. It's like if you're in 2006, and I tried to explain to you Tesla today. You know.
Hey, shout out to Tom there.
Yeah, nice.
I watch you every day, Tom. Yeah. I love you.
It's good to see
you.
You.
Just came in, give you guys a shout out.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, so like, yeah, try and explain to someone in 2006 what Tesla's going to be, you know, and they'd be like, I don't think you're right. Like, I just don't think, like, I get that what you're saying, it could happen. And I can imagine what it could look like, you know, with all these cars that you're saying and driving around and superchargers and autopilot and
well, you know what, this reminds me of, we were just talking to the CEO of Energy X, which is a lithium company, and T. Egan was in 2018. He was in Bolivia. He went just for vacation. He saw how they all the pools of lithium, and he was like, what are those? And like, that's how we get lithium out of the ground now. We put in these big brine pools, we let it evaporate. And he was like, well, that's the size of Manhattan. And that's how we do it, because that's just ancient technology. And he was like, why do we do it this way? And they're like, because we've always done it this way. That is what we do as humans. We just walk around all day going, well, that's how we did it before.
And you know what? That worked for so long, like evolutionarily, if we're talking about that. It was like, hey, you know what's great? Sharp stone. Can't beat sharp stone.
Good.
Cut good. No argue. Sharp stone. Very good. It was just like, you want to do what? You want to go walk into that cave? Yeah, you're gonna die. And then they probably did, right? So it was like, do what we know. You know, hey, you know, let's make some hand axes out of stone. That's gonna be cool. This one's neat. It has a shell in it.
No, it's a really good point. Don't walk into the cave because you're putting your life in your hands if you did.
Exactly.
But now we have new technology, and yet we're still so reticent to use it.
We're still cavemen.
Yeah, and we still can't picture, even though there's been movies about robots and movies about autonomous cars, we're still like, how does that work?
Well, here's the problem. Movies always got to be exciting. You can't just have a movie that's just like, you know, because like, you know, the period piece, you know, it's cool. It's the 1940s and we're in the 1940s. They're never just having a good time, right? There's always going to be someone gets shot or someone's having an affair. It's always got to be dramatic. And so the same thing is going to be true with robots. So it's a period piece in the future, and they go, the robots are back, except they're going to say it in a futuristic way. But the future's a little scary. We got to do something. It's different. The one thing that's different, that's going to be a plot point. So our frame of reference is completely thrown off by the fact that we consume media that is just tailored to entertain us.
Yeah.
And so then as soon as they say, oh, it's the Middle Ages, well, we're going to have knights fight each other. They're not just hanging around farming all day, was what they did 98% of the time. We're going to cut to the exciting part. And so with robots, what are the robots going to do? Are they going to uprise? Yeah, maybe.
But, you know, Tesla's their own worst enemy because they have so many exciting products coming out. For instance, next year, most likely, if Elon is right, Cybertruck. That alone is going to just take up all of our brain, because when we've been driving the Rivian around, people's heads are already kind of breaking.
They'll turn, they'll go to the furthest extent, and then they'll just turn around. They want to see it.
So Cybertruck, they're going to break their necks.
Because the Rivian, right? It looks like a truck. It just looks like a really cool truck. I will grant them that. They hit big home run on the design of the Rivian. It looks like it's part Land Rover, part pickup truck. It's
part robot.
Also, we drove it through Maine, but Maine is truck city for truck. They don't have cities, but they have trucks, and they loved it. We everywhere that I drive it, they absolutely love it.
So imagine Cybertruck.
People are endangering me on the highway by like pulling up
Giving us
alongside
thumbs
me.
up.
Give me the thumb. Yeah, man. Woo!
So that is the R1T making you more bullish about the Cybertruck?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the R1T looks like a slightly different truck.
Yeah, it's a game.
When I pull up and their brain goes,
Yep.
Error, does not compute. What is that?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of aneurysms.
And then I go, and they went, what the hell was that? Because I do that with the Rivian, obviously.
Right.
And people are just like, whoa. They'll like pull up the next thing and just be like, what was that? Because obviously it goes 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds or whatever. The Cybertruck's going to do the same thing, and it's going to look like it just fell out of a video game.
Plus, I mean, we want to be one of the first to shoot at it with a gun.
Yeah.
So.
And you know how many people are going to shoot at it with a gun?
Just hope it's not
America.
ours.
It's not even.
Don't shoot at our Cybertruck.
That's the thing, though. It's going to be this content generating machine, like not even for us, but just so many different segments.
And that's just one product. I didn't mention Roadster yet.
Yeah.
When that product comes out and it starts using its cold jet thrusters, and then when Tesla Semi comes out that year,
because I think that Model S, right, has been laying down the law at drag strips across this great nation and across the world, and it's kind of what gives Tesla a lot of cred.
Yeah.
It gives, and Farzad, I think you talked about this, when we were talking in our episode, and you were like, there's all this stuff that Tesla gets a lot, like people actually are like, oh, Tesla, that's clout. Like there's clout there because Tesla can do all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And so I think that the Roadster, when it can, hover or, just having cold air thrusters and being able to just smoke the floor of anything, F1 cars
that cost
and stuff,
10 times it.
right? That is going to just be another feather in the cap of Tesla as well.
Can you tell we're a little bullish?
I'm so a little bit. I don't know.
It's a
Just
little
a bit.
easy,
Yeah.
sure, but we'll see. Ishan or Hans, I'm not sure, or Kuba, did you guys have anything you wanted to add to those points?
Yeah, no, completely agree. I mean,
I have a couple.
Okay.
yeah, especially with the Roadster. I mean, do you think cold gas thrusters are going to be road legal?
No.
Well, I mean, there's so many things that are already not road legal.
Right.
And
You're not supposed to roll coal, but they do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I think if you're on a backstretch somewhere, people are going to use them. I'm not saying I'm going to do it.
Do you know how badly I want to anti-roll coal on trucks with the exhaust this wide?
Big vacuum, scoop it all up.
I mean, just literally blow the trucks off the road. No, they're not going to be road legal, I don't think. That won't stop people from using them, including me. I just,
hypothetically,
yeah. Because we're talking about a tech, we don't know if it's going to happen,
right?
But it's going to be a thing, and people are going to want to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be TikToks. I mean, where's that road in LA where like it's just a big jump?
Oh yeah.
And people have taken 2 Teslas off of it already. I don't think that's good, but it's freaking cool. I love to see a Model X fly. That was sick. You've destroyed it and it wasn't yours, so I don't like that part of it. But in terms of like grassroots, what did I say at TTN this week? I was like grassroots content
creation,
the influencer economy.
If you
So
can
are you
make,
saying that you would stick the landing thanks to the cold thrusters?
You could, or I'm just saying if like people doing illegal things that are bad, and I know, they'll do them with the cold air thrusters, and it's going to just be so cool that everyone's going to really laugh about it. Just like we watch, movies, and James Bond smashes and murders somebody, by driving them off a highway, and we're just like, that was cool. It's going to be the exact same thing, except in real life, except hopefully without the murder. But I'm just saying, that kind of thing is just like marketing heaven, where you don't have to pay a dime other than make this amazing thing. And then the world is going to go, this is cool. And everyone's going to think it's cool. And you can buy a Model 3.
Right.
Yep.
or a Cybertruck.
It does almost that.
Right. Exactly. Close enough.
It's pretty much good enough. You're going to be happy enough with the Model 3, which is a race car. And we've proven it's a race car because we've raced it.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Pikes Peak, and it won.
We won.
You know.
Think.
Real quick, you guys can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
I'm having some audio
Yeah.
issues on my side. Okay, perfect. So what? Just maybe one last question on this topic. So, what do you think the real market size for Cybertruck is, given your experience with the R1T?
Well, I mean, we all know that pickup trucks are the biggest vehicle in the U.S. And Ford is only alive still because of the F-150. So some ramifications, I think, are that everyone who's kind of positive on Ford because they're coming out with the Lightning, and look, we're getting the Lightning in a couple weeks, so
And I'm hyped.
I'm excited. I think one of the ramifications is bye Ford. I just don't. Everyone who says, well, I don't like the look of the Cybertruck. First of all, you probably haven't seen it up close. You probably just seen it in pictures. It does not translate. We've been in it. We've been next to it. It's just, I don't know. It just has some effect on you when you're near it. It is the future. And so, look, are we all going to have cars that always look the same? No. I mean, they always change. And our design aesthetic gets changed as the future goes on. And so I think as we see more and more Cybertruck, we're going to think, why don't more things look like that? So I think it's just a humongous market share, and it's only going to be limited by how fast they can produce them. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as every Tesla that they've ever come out with, which is that it's going to be production limited.
I mean, over
a
a million people have reservations.
Yeah.
Like-
I mean, that was just, again, seeing it on a screen.
Right.
The one thing is, too, like, I remember when the Model 3, was first unveiled, and I had, I spent hours making my work computer at the time cycle my desktop background every 30 seconds to another picture of the Model 3. And then when I saw one in real life, I was like, oh my God, it looks way better than it does in all of these pictures that I've been drooling over for the last, 3 years, whatever it was I was waiting for. And I think that something about the design of Teslas just doesn't look the same in real life than it does on screen. They look better in real life than on screen. And I think the Cybertruck is going to kind of be like that. It's really tough though, because obviously the Cybertruck doesn't have like those curves and the German designed looking lines, even though Franz isn't German, even though he sounds like a count,
Do you plan to test the home backup with the Lightning?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to get the special Ford. Well, so here's the funny thing. We called the dealer and we were like, I'd like to ahead of time get the special Ford, whatever they call it, the home charger thing. And they're like, the what? No, wait, what are we? Hang on. And they like put me on hold.
Right.
They came back and like, you're getting your Lightning here? I'm like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the cool
dealer network.
The cool thing about Ford is that we get to pick it up really close by.
Maybe knock on wood, because I don't know.
Okay. To probably it's one of the nearest Ford locations to us, which is cool.
Yeah, if it all works.
If it all works. With Rivian, we had to lie about where we lived and pick it up in New York City and drive it all the way home.
Right.
With Tesla, it's fine because they're that they do this.
Well, that's another thing. Tesla already has service centers. And I know we pick on them sometimes, but Rivian, we just had water in the doors. So we called up Rivian and we said, we got water in the doors. And they're like, great, let's book a service appointment. How about the end of August? And this was mid-July. And I was like, how about no? How about I have water in my doors and I'd like you to take care of it now? And they're like, yeah, so how about end of August? And I'm like,
when your doors have rusted off.
How many customers do you have in Massachusetts already that you're already a month plus out?
Right.
That's kind of scary.
Right.
Either they have no service people or they have no service people.
Or they just have every truck they've sent out. They're getting the same call.
This is the other side of things that I don't think most of us think about is, okay, production's hard, but then service and keeping your customers happy is hard.
So then you're going like, well, but Ford's got this covered. And it's like, I don't think that they will, because I think what it's going to be is there's probably going to be one Ford trained tech who's going to have to travel between all of them in a region.
Yeah, exactly.
And, is going to be super busy and they won't be able to get parts. I mean, my Nissan Leaf, 2013 Nissan Leaf, one of the cells went bad. I brought it into Nissan. Thank goodness I had it under warranty. They had my car for a month. They were waiting on a part. Oh yeah, it's really tough. I don't know when it's coming.
Yeah.
You're the dealer. Japan. You're telling me you don't know it. I don't know. and it was like a month and a half of no.
Meanwhile, you were driving a Nissan Rogue.
No, it was a Versa.
Versa,
Not even
whatever.
a Rogue.
Yeah, I think the one thing I agree with you 100%. I think the fact that I had the sort of the luxury of working in so closely on the service side of things at Tesla really opened my mind at just how hard supply chain is and how hard customer service is. And it's super, super. I would make an argument, again, I'm biased, right? But I would make an argument that that stuff is harder than manufacturing in some sense, because you're dealing with a human being, and you're dealing with them for years and decades to come potentially. And you have this non-automatic, non-mechanical relationship with the thing you're trying to solve.
Yep.
And you have to keep that relationship moving forward. I think the one thing that's really interesting to me, which I'm curious maybe to get your take on it, is that, you know, we know that Tesla and others have challenges with service because we know it's really, really hard. What's interesting is, if I think about it in the long term, say like 10 to 20 years, it does appear to me that that's when Tesla's, I think, sort of positioning in the market now starts to kick in from a service perspective, because the company is incentivized to make as reliable as a car is humanly possible, because they own the entire dealer network. So they have the right incentives in place to try and better that over time. Doesn't excuse their behavior in some places now, in some regions, but I think about it from a long-term perspective, and I wonder if that turns into a true differentiator in the long term. And in some cases, you make an argument that that's already the case in some areas in the States, especially that are well covered and they have a lot of mobile service and stuff. But I think long term, I wonder if that becomes the winning strategy for companies to become super vertically integrated, own your entire service network, so that you have the incentive to lower your cost from a repair perspective, so that you don't lose money, right? I'm curious to hear everybody's thoughts.
Well, let me just flip at this for a second. Let me just ask you guys. So you said 10 to 15 years. I kind of feel like in 10 to 15 years, we no longer own cars. I feel like in 10 to 15 years, it's just Tesla network. And of course, they still need to be serviced, but the customer is kind of out of the loop. Do you think I'm crazy?
I don't think so. I'm curious to
Not
hear
at
everyone
all.
else's thoughts, but I don't think so. What do y'all think? Hans, you're muted if you're talking.
Hans is saying he thinks I'm crazy, but he muted himself.
I think it depends on the geography. I would say, yeah, most urban, like dense to moderately dense populated areas, probably yes.
Yeah, I just think that we might be, again, doing the same problem that humans always have, which is like, well, there'll always be cars owned by humans and they'll always be put in your garage. And I don't know. I just think that car ownership is stupid. We just have been lulled into thinking it's great, but it's really dumb. It costs a lot of money, and we all actually don't want to own cars. We just want to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible.
Well, it's like a landline.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
we all used to have landlines. I remember landlines, because, you know, and you'd have to walk over to the phone. You'd have to, and then when we had wireless phones in your house, it was cool because you could walk, but then you didn't know where they were, you know, so that you had to, you know, so like, but what we all eventually, I think we've all done, probably all here, is we have called up our cable/phone company and said, I don't really want a landline anymore. And they said, are you sure? And we said, yes. And they said, are you sure? It's a better plan. And we said, yeah, I think I can get a better plan without it. And I think they finally learned that. But for the longest time, they really wanted to bundle it. I think it again, it doesn't make much sense.
Right, and it's the same thing. If you told me 20 years ago that I wouldn't have a landline, I'd say you're crazy.
I would always want to. I would always want there to be a phone.
The phone's
that I could
always
pick up.
over there. I know where it is.
Yeah, for sure. I do think I'm not so sure if it's 10, 15 years, because I think it would require, quite a large market penetration for those. You know, I don't know if there's going to be enough market penetration for, say, the majority of the people to be under that model, but I do think there's definitely going to be a certain, like a significant percentage of the people are going to choose to do it because of exactly what you said. No hassle and no cost associated from a time perspective for you to take time out of your day to get the car serviced or to meet up with the mobile service technician to come repair it.
Right.
So the incentives are there, especially in an environment where, because I was thinking about this a lot, like say, we were in an inflationary environment, but we have this continuing wealth gap between the one that have the most and the one that have the least. And we can talk about AGI and all that stuff that's going to happen. But I still, like, the forces for somebody to want to spend less time and money on something are going to become greater because I don't it's going to become too big of a forcing function, and stuff like that, like you described, fits perfectly within that context, right?
I mean, and I think that horses are a good example as well, right? We had horses all the way up until the late 30s and stuff like that. I mean, I think it was like the British were the last people to get rid of their, cavalry divisions right before World War II, or I'm sure half of it's Nazi propaganda, who knows? But, we had horses quite up until that point, and especially in rural areas and stuff like that. Like it was like there were still horses, but of course, like exactly what you're saying, Hans. Like I think that we're probably in 10 to 15 years, kind of like 1930s adoption of cars as opposed to horses. So it's not everywhere 100%, but it is. I think we will be really close in 2032 to 2035. Like actually lines up pretty well, darn it. Where it's going to just be, some people will, of course, just still have a car because it was just sitting in their garage.
Although I would argue at some point, though, when will they be outlawed? I mean, you can't take your horse on the highway.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I think at some point we think, well, that'll never happen. I'll always be able to drive my car. But if you're more dangerous, why would you be allowed to?
I mean, the amount of damage that a car can do is similar to a bazooka.
Right. And right now, there's no option. It's just humans that drive cars. But when the option changes, when Elon turns on FSD and we actually start to get the data and we go, oh, they're 3 times safer, 5 times safer, 100 times safer, we'll then begin, politicians and all of us will go, oh, I don't want to allow another human on the road. They kill people.
I don't want another person to die. It's like if we had the cure to cancer and it was like, but, it's expensive.
But you do have to be able to provide 100% of transportation for 100% of people before you can say, hey, you can't drive your car.
Totally. And I mean, look, like there are still places where the horse is the way that you still get around.
Yep.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to sit here and say it's 100%. I do agree that there are going to be, I'm just going to say that it's going to be the lower majority of the population.
It's also going to be economically, if your city is not doing it, you're going to clamor for it. So like if your city is still on the fence and is not allowing it, but you're like, our neighboring cities are all doing it, so they have lower cost of everything, you're going to just say, hey, I'm moving, or you better do it.
Right. And I think that it's going to I think that safety and stuff like that, but you're absolutely right that it's not going to be 100% everywhere. It's just going to it's going to be a weird mix. And I think that it's really hard to imagine when I'm thinking of like this utopian thought of full self-driving cars everywhere, and then kind of the fringes of that. It's kind of like imagining like the outer fringes of some empire. It's kind of like the
it's
Star
Tatooine.
Wars. It's the Tatooine where like the empire is they're kind of in control, but like not Boba Fett, Jabba the Hutt could definitely take care of business if he needed to. The Imperials can't really get to him. So I think that there would be that to an extent, and then I think within 20 to 30 to 40 years it would become completely
And also the cost involved with buying, owning, maintaining a car is going to be astronomically high, right? Because not a lot of companies are going to be building retail cars, if I may use that term, and then you won't have a lot of let's say garages or mechanics around, and you won't have as many fuel stations and therefore as much refining capacity geared towards automobiles. So there's this entire ecosystem flywheel that essentially is going to work towards that, hey, it's way too expensive and therefore only reserved for certain niches, or of course, I mean, I'm 100% sure that there will be people who'll want a V12 manual, rev it up, etc. But it's gonna be a very, very it's negligible, right?
Yeah, and
there are people who race horses.
Yep.
Right.
There are people who race horses and people who go to
Exactly. No, and I really like your point. As soon as the infrastructure around cars starts to dwindle, as soon as it starts to go away, it's going to be a rolling snowball. And again, it takes slower the further away from the city centers you get, but it's going to eventually get to the point where parts are going to be harder to get, and everything that you're saying, it's exactly true. Where am I going to get it serviced? Where am I going to get it fixed? It's more expensive now because garages can charge more because they kind of have me over a barrel, and it's going to push adoption, I think, towards full autonomy. But let's bring it back towards the garages of today and back to what we were talking about. So service. What were we talking about, Farzad? What was your question? It was a good question.
I don't want a lot of different things. The question was in the long term. It seems like Tesla. Was this my question? Yeah, it was. I think. We'll find out. Tesla seems to have the call it infrastructure, the strategy long term for service to become a like a true strength in the future, because they control their entire supply chain. They control the entire end-to-end customer experience. They have an app that allows you to have a relationship, sometimes not in the best way. Honestly, personally, I sometimes don't like that. I can't talk to a person, but we can say that for a different day. But it does seem like over time, they have the right incentives in place because they control so much from a vertical standpoint, and they own the cost structure for the service centers and all the supply chain, that they have a forcing function and an incentive to lower the cost of repairs as much as humanly possible, which is the correct incentive, versus every other automaker, especially if they use a third-party sort of a service center model, where they're not really incentivized to lower the cost of repair. They're actually kind of incentivized to sell parts to the service center. So I'm curious if you guys, just an open question. I'm wondering if y'all would agree with that statement, that over time, I think Tesla would have a tremendous advantage from a repair and service perspective versus everybody else. But I don't know. It's just...
They certainly do. And one of the interesting things, though, is that so few people know it. If you drive an ICE car today and a Tesla passes you, you have no idea what that Tesla experience is like. Unless you watch our show or your friend talks to you about it incessantly at work, you don't know about the fact that they never go in for service practically. But have you noticed that when you see a household down the street that gets a Tesla, very soon after that, the ICE car that was parked next to it also disappears and is replaced by another Tesla? Because once you've experienced Tesla and ICE car, you're like, oh, I definitely don't want to live in the past anymore. So that's the only thing I think that's holding back Tesla at all, is that this part of the experience, the charging experience, the maintenance experience, the saving money on fuel, is very hard to teach until you either have a close friend or family member, or you experience it yourself. And so I think it's the only thing that's slowing down adoption at all, is just the fact that there's us in a bubble, and then there's everyone else outside the bubble.
And also, if you do have negative experiences with Tesla service, and another thing is too, they've raised expectations. I would say, I think that Elon has done a lot to kind of raise my expectations of service. He said that he wants to, he wants to be an F1, repair thing. And it's like, I think that that's great if you can deliver that. What my imagination goes to is that, like, there's a pit stop somewhere on the highway and I'm going to pull in and they're going to, and like, I'm expecting it to be that. And it's like, I just don't think you need to set that high an expectation. And I don't think that you need to set that, I think back in the day with the Model S, it was great to have, they had white glove service. It was freaking awesome. You'd pick up your car, it'd be detailed every single time, even if they were, looking at something.
You got a loaner that was equal to or better than what you had.
Right. Cool. And I get that for Model S and Model X owners, white glove experience. You spend $150,000 on a car. I get it. But now I think, we might need to lower expectations, because when I go in and I'm rewatching my episode about, service or whatever, I'm whiny. Why am I so freaking whiny about this? Why am I like, it wasn't as good as it could be, and I think it could be perfect? It's like, why should I expect that? Because the car is amazing and it feels like I'm a spaceship. So why am I not bringing it to some like Star Trek spaceport, not Star Wars spaceport, Star Trek spaceport, where they're fixing it with lasers? You know what I mean? Like, that's my expectation, just because the car gives me it. I feel like if it was a little bit less, I feel like that's why I want people on the phone, because then you go like, oh, okay, they're going to take care of it, but they're human, as opposed to it's like, welcome
Androids.
to the Tesla app,
Yeah, and that's like one of the like relative weaknesses of, and I agree with you 100%. The relative weaknesses of Tesla is that they're so good at so many things that when they're average or below average at some things, they really stand out.
Right, because like every time I have to get my tires changed, I don't want to make Tesla do it, and I don't want to have to drive that far away. So I call up this place, and when I tell you that the guy who answers the phone doesn't utter a sentence to me, and he's I can't speak after he says that because I've prepared myself every single time I call because it's like right down the street. What am I gonna
record it?
I swear to God, he doesn't say he's American. Like it's I'm not making fun of anybody.
Other end of the conversation, you're always perplexed.
I'm just like, I want my tires changed. I have a car. Can you do tires? You've done them for the past 3 years.
Has tire in the title.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But he doesn't say that. So like that's what I'm dealing with on the other end of it. And it's like I'm sure that lots of people have dealt with that. I remember I got my I had to take it to that place in Wisconsin when I worked out there, and they charged me $4,000 for a transmission. Not Tesla, obviously, it was Subaru. And it was just like and he had it for 2 weeks, and my
and you didn't even get much
getting...
of a warranty. It was like, here's a 3-minute warranty or something.
Oh yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So it's like, the comparison isn't even close, and yet I'm such a spoiled, whiny brat about it, because I just have such high expectations.
But I think long term, that's good for Tesla, because from my experience, them being able, at least from what I've seen, like that's okay. Like it's okay for it to have that expectation, because I think we want them to be the best possible version that they can be across every spectrum, and that's why I think we care so much. Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing, right? So I think it's go ahead,
in the Robotaxi world, every minute that the car is not on the road is a minute that Tesla is not making money.
Yeah, did you hear Elon at the latest shareholder meeting? He said that when cars self-drive, instead of being used for 12 hours a week, they'll be used for 40 to 50 hours a week. And was I the only one who thought, no, Elon, do your math again.
That's too low.
There's 162 hours in a week. They're going to be used for like 140 hours a week. There'll be a few minutes in the middle of the night when, maybe no one's booking them. But like in most cities, they're going to be used around the clock.
Right.
Do you think there's a sandbag? Sorry, Ishan, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to sort of say, okay, 140, but there's also going to be like peak demand and low demand times, right? So they might be available 140 hours a week, but probably not driving 140. But yeah, definitely not 40 hours a week.
Right. I just thought he was way off.
It was funny.
Yeah. Maybe was he sandbagging?
I don't know.
But he also said about that, period of time when the value of FSD for anybody who has it right now is just going to be so much more, right?
Right.
I think you guys mentioned it in TDN. So, I guess what he essentially meant was that there is going to be a period of time when there aren't enough robotaxis, right? So the demand is going to be like super high off the charts. And then, yes, they're going to flood the market, but that's going to happen linearly, exponentially, whatever it is. But that initial 2, 3, 5 year period, because FSD is FSD. If it goes live, it goes live everywhere, right? So there's no ramp. So yeah, it's that period of time when probably that 140 number that you said might just get hit, but I think it's going to be a ramp down from there.
Yeah, but I do think the first, say, 5 to 10 years that Robotaxi is launched until it's like fully permeated everywhere, I do fully expect them to run close to 100% capacity, because the cost difference between that technology versus every other vehicle out there, plus the percentage of Robotaxis on the road versus everything else, will be so much lower that every single Robotaxi out there is going to be running at full capacity. Like over time,
Plus, think of human behavior. You cannot now hop in a car and overnight yourself to Las Vegas. Like, you have to drive it or hire a guy to drive you. But if I could overnight myself to Las Vegas, watch a movie, fall asleep, I might just completely change my behavior and start doing that more often. And I think humans are going to start changing their behaviors on a whole lot of things when that becomes a reality. And I just don't think any of us are imagining what that looks like, but I think we're going to start doing it.
Yeah, or work.
Right, exactly. We can work in different hours. Yeah. Exactly.
There's a long road trip I need to take. I don't have to, take off one day. That's huge.
Yeah.
Right. I can be working on my way there. Yeah. That's an excellent point. No, and like you were saying, even if we don't even consider all of this behavioral change, if it's just like Uber, except it costs half as much.
Mm-hmm.
Which one are you going to choose?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to take the one that costs less.
Yeah. And talk about labor. I mean, this is actually labor he's giving us here. So he's changing the economy in the sense that he's just freed up all these resources, all this discretionary income that we're now going to have. I don't have to buy a car anymore, and my cost of transportation just nosedives. So now I have this extra money. That's a huge change that anyone who takes advantage of it is going to have.
Right.
100%. The cost equation is going to be completely bananas for most people. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
We're 5 minutes from an hour. I do want to make sure Kuba gets his answer in here. This conversation is going so freaking fast. I literally looked at the clock. I'm like, damn. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Kuba, go ahead and throw your question out there because I'm curious to hear what it is. But definitely unmute first before, go.
Good point. So a bit of a change of topic because I got some more personal question for you guys. I was impressed after I learned that you're a father and son duo. It took me a while after following you. It's impressive that you have this great relationship and you're working together for all those years, seemingly without glitches.
What great relationship.
Yeah, I was wondering how you manage that. So maybe Zac, you could tell us how you raised Jesse, and Jesse, you can tell us how it felt. And
I put him in a little
why.
box, and I just kept saying Tesla, Tesla, until he agreed with me. And then I'd give him treats. And
well, let's see. We've always been working together.
I think it goes back to maybe that we've also worked on physical projects together a lot. Yeah. Like we work, so I'm a business a building contractor, and so we've always had projects like we roofed the house together, and I think
we built the
house together,
the more than half edition of the house,
and we enjoy working with our hands. And I think there's something that's been missing in the past couple generations around the world, which is I think this used to be very common. You'd work with your kids because you probably needed to fix your house or fix your farm and fix the tractor. So you'd constantly be doing that. And that builds up trust. When I can trust Jesse with a hammer, that just builds this amazing trust between us, and he can trust
when you trust me with a nail gun.
Right.
That's another level of trust.
And I think today, if you look at most kids, I've worked with kids like in the schools and in farmers markets and stuff, and I'll be like, oh, they're like Jesse, so go set up that tent. And then I come back half an hour later and they're like, how do you get the tent out of the bag?
And it's ripped in half.
And I'm like, you guys are really smart kids. How come you can't put up a tent?
Right.
Well, we don't do this regularly.
Right. They didn't get the physical.
And I think we've almost downplayed the importance of physicality in learning. I think that until you actually know how tools work and how the physical world works, it's hard to solve problems and to be a good engineer or good whatever. And I'm really disappointed in our school systems for not incorporating more of that into them. And so, yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with just that we did a lot of physical things together.
Yeah. And I mean, I trust you because basically I've seen you do a lot of things that I've met lots of people and they don't know how to do. So whether it's, build our house, which I lived in. So I'm like, oh yeah, well, this guy kind of knows what the fuck he's talking about. Cause like I live in the house that he built with his hands. So I'm like, yeah, it tracks that I'm going to, I'm going to listen to him most of the time. And so I think that's kind of the basis of our trust. That's a good point.
And then the other thing is when we first started this channel, we both hopped in the Tesla at the same time.
And had the exact same experience.
We basically started just driving, and we drove throughout our state, and we drove to a place that we'd never driven before, and like Provincetown. And we're like, that was fun. Let's do more. Is there more places we can drive? Oh, there is. We can stop at superchargers. Oh, can we keep going? How about if we go to the other side of the country together?
Right.
Oh, that worked.
Yeah. I mean, I forget what the name of the website was back then, but there was like this very rudimentary EV trip planner, and it was basically just like,
I think it was evtripplanner.com or something.
Right. And it like worked enough to get us across the states or whatever. And it was like, wow, that worked. And I think that to me, we had definitely done something that not a lot of people had done, at least in the Model X at the time. And it was just like, okay, so yeah, we did it. So I can trust that works. And that really gave me a lot of confidence in what we were talking about. And so when we faced a lot of people who were like, man, you can't do that. And it was like, well, I fucking did it, jerk. It was like that, I think, really cements what we're talking about now, where because, Zac and I have done Tesla Time News for 308 weeks in a row, we've just been talking about Tesla.
So you see, we're also crazy. That's probably
A
answers
little
your
bit
question.
crazy, but also I'm like, you know, like when the superhero gets their powers. Like I think they did a really good job in like the first Spider-Man, you know, the one with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man or whatever. And he's like he has Spidey senses or whatever. I'm kind of like that now, where it's like I know Tesla backwards and forwards. So now when I'm thinking and talking about it, we can talk about Tesla in such a high level way. Whereas like I try and talk to like, I showed the Rivian to my friend's uncle and he liked it, but he thought that they should have a fire suppression system on board. And so I said, so you want them to have, you want the car to carry water? He's like, yeah. I'm like, so you want like 50 gallons of water just in case lights on fire? And it's like, I'm not going to have that conversation with Zach, or we would laugh about it like we're doing now. And you're all laughing about it because you know that that's the least efficient that like, do we have cars that have that now?
And yet most cars
no, they catch on fire at a higher rate. We all know this, right? And so that's
We have
funny.
fire
But
engines.
he's literally, this guy is looking me straight in the eye and saying, yeah. And I'm going like, so you're afraid of the Bolt. The Bolt has scared you from EVs. And so that way when I'm like, yeah, the Bolt kind of sucks. And then I also have to be like, okay, but you know, put it into a different frame of mind. I'm glad that people can buy the Bolt. It's a cheap and pretty decent EV. I'm super, if you drive a Bolt, you fucking rock, right? Hard to have those different things, but we both, you know, because we've been doing it for so long. I think it's just Stockholm syndrome, right?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
We've solved
Mutual.
it.
We solved it.
And so I know we're at time, but just one last quick question, if you guys don't mind. I'm really curious to hear. So, because I think this last question that Kuba asked can be so transformational to so many people. You know, I think there's a lot of a lot of families out there that would benefit from like the kind of relationship you both have. It's super great to see, and I really do like. I don't have kids, but when I grow up, I want to have the kind of relation. When I have kids and I grow up, actually, it goes hand in hand. Correct statement, I guess. That's the kind of relationship I want to have with my kid. You know, so maybe Zach, what's the best advice you can give me, and then maybe Jesse, from your perspective, what's some advice you can give me as well?
It's going to sound like old-fashioned advice, I think, but it's read to your kids. Spend a lot of time reading to your kids. Now, maybe in the future, you'll just Neuralink to your kids, but that it's time you're spending with them. It's time you're spending with imagination. It's time you're spending where they're stopping you and going, hey, wait a minute, what just happened? Why did it happen? Why did that guy do that? Where you're having discussions. And then at the end of that book, you have that shared experience that only you two have. And that's kind of special. And then you know that the reading that you did somehow enhanced the imagination of your child. Imagination, I think, is one of the most important things that we as humans have. And so to me, it's one of the only ways we can instill imagination in a kid. If I give them a movie to watch, I've said this before, you know, if I read you Harry Potter, your imagination of, you know, what Harry looks like or Dumbledore looks like is all you. That's your world.
And it's okay if you mispronounce Hermione's name.
Which I did for the first 3
Hermione.
books.
So I pictured
Hermione. Was it Hermione?
No, it was Hermione. Hermione Granger. I pictured her as a nun in my head. That was just the way that I pictured Hermione Granger.
Yeah. And then I saw
to find
the first movie came out, and I'm like, oh, it's Hermione.
I'm like, whoa, who's this?
Well, I screwed up.
But I mean, you didn't, because I had a different perspective of it.
Right.
I remember we used to play, what was that game? Stronghold. You know, so I think like intelligent, like, because there are different types of video games, and you always played we played SimCity, played Stronghold. So I remember I knew what apothecary was when it was a vocab word. And they were like, it's apothecary. You're going to have to write that in a sentence. I'm like, the knight rode up to the apothecary. I was like, I was ready for that one. And that felt really good. I remember it. Like that one stands out to me. And it was like, oh, I played a game which I wouldn't have been able to do, you know, because you had to like balance an economy in a game. And it was like, well, I couldn't have done that. But I learned, you know, where to put the towers and, you know, like all of that. I think all of that of being able to do something that a kid normally can't do, but under the supervision of an adult who's going to give them pretty much you know, it's it's too much for a kid, but you can kind of do it. I would say that is what kind of gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of skills to where I just feel comfortable doing things that are more difficult. You know, I'm over at my friends' houses, like fixing their toilets and stuff, because I'm just like, I can do it. And they're like, hey, can you help me like build something? I'm like, yes, I can help you do it. And I feel like it's that kind of confidence that helps with this channel and stuff that we do, and also our relationship.
Yeah.
Because every time I'm, you know, have my hands down in the toilet thing, it's okay, it's clean. See, and he taught me that it's clean, don't worry about it. And I'm screwing in, you know, the flush thing. It's just water that's coming straight in. There's no poop in it. You know, I'm thinking like, oh, I'm so glad my dad taught me how to do this, you know. And I think that builds trust over a long period of time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that candid answer. I think, and that's one of the coolest things about your channel is that it's clear that you guys have a lot of respect and love for each other, and it really shows through, and it's just a really cool dynamic to see, especially in the Tesla community. You know, I think it's just, you know, we're all in this little bubble, but what I always find fascinating is sort of the humanity aspect of a lot of these channels, and I think yours has a really cool, unique one. And I just really want to thank you for everything you guys do, honestly, and thank you so much for making the time to come on the channel. Thank you, Ishan, Hans, and Kuba for making the time as well. But I don't know if you guys have any parting words, but yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you guys.
No, and thank you. It was so great having you on our show, and that was really well received. And I just love this community. I mean, again, I feel so honored that I'm part of it, like that we are in, I don't know, a cult or bubble or Stockholm syndrome, whatever you want to call it, but like whatever it is, it's great. I'm glad I'm a part of it. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you all, everybody, for joining us in the comments and watching this. Like I said, thank you again. Welcome back anytime, obviously. And yeah, we'll see everybody soon. Take it easy, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
And broadcast. Here we go.